Hey everybody, so today I am here to give you guys my February wrap up of all the books that I read in the month of February. I read 9. I'm trying something very different with my setup. If this does not work out and the lighting isn't able to be fixed in editing and stuff, I guess I'll just refilm this. But if you're seeing this means that I was actually able to work with this, so this kind of setup might be something that you see more of. I just want to start filming more with my glasses. This is what I look like all the time, and I hate having to not wear glasses just to film. It makes things harder to see when I'm filming, and also there's just a whole thing about it. So bear with me. I'm kind of using these videos as a guinea pig, but I'm actually gonna see if I can make like the background of my desk kind of be a setup that you guys see occasionally instead of me sitting on my couch. So let's go ahead and get started. The very first book that I finished in the month of February was The Last House on Needless Street. It's crazy how a book can go from almost DNFing it to being one of my favorite books of all time. That's the spectrums here. I mean, the first 100 pages are absolute work. If you're not somebody who likes to be thrown in something that you don't understand, you're going to hate this. I hated the first 100 pages. I was like, what is going on? I don't understand why any of this is important. And I promise you it's getting there, because after that 100 pages, it just starts unfolding and unraveling in ways that just bent my mind in a way that's never been done before. Truly, just one of my all-time favorite books now. It is definitely one that takes a little bit getting there, but it's nothing like the story that you thought it was going to be. So you think it's pretty straightforward. It's about a missing girl and this girl's sister looking for her. There's also this suspicious person that lives on this street, and it seems pretty straightforward, but I promise you, this is going places that you never saw coming. So I gave it 5 stars. It's one of my favorite books of all time now. I kind of want to read it again just because now that I know the ending, like rereading it and seeing all the pieces come together, maybe even earlier. But wow, if you can hang on for the first 100 or so pages, because it is really strange. There's chapters that are written by a cat, and I'm like, why do I have a cat's perspective right now? I'm sure it's going someplace, but I'm not sure I want to know. However, hang in there. Hang in there. It is so worth it. Loved this book. So we were off to a good start. And then I gave this book a chance. I saw it on TikTok. So this is 7 Dirty Secrets. I can't remember what the TikTok said exactly, but I think it was something about how it was like an ending that you could never guess. I love those ones. I really do. I love when it just completely T-bones me with an ending that I did not see coming. I love that. This is not that. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I probably would have given it 3.5, but all things considered, and Goodreads doesn't let you do halves, I rounded down to 3. There was just a lot of talk about this book having so many twists and turns, and it was such an onion, and there were so many layers and so many things you wouldn't guess, and I just found this to be the complete opposite. It felt very predictable. I felt like I knew exactly where it was going the whole time. Not to say that it was a bad book, which is why I still gave it 3 stars. It's not bad. It's not unreadable or anything like that whatsoever. It was just super predictable, and I felt like it was a little childish between the kids, but at the same time, they are young adults, and this is a young adult book. So I try not to be too critical with that, but I just didn't really love this, and that's the reason why I gave it 3 stars and not round up and give it 4. I just wasn't in love with it. I felt like it was predictable. But if you like a thriller or a mystery or something where you have to put together the pieces and you like it being a little predictable, I think this is perfectly fine. And it is also a really quick read. I flew through this because it was still super interesting, and I liked the idea of the plot line, and the story itself is still good. So there's a lot of things that redeem it, but I just didn't like the predictability. So on to my 3rd read of the month, and this is also now one of my favorite books of all time. So this I took off of my friend Marley's recommendation, 7 Days in June. She read this. She was talking about how phenomenal it was, and I decided to give it a go. I'm not much of a romance reader. I have like a couple of authors that I stick to, and that's really the only time I'll do it. But every now and then I do branch out and I try something different. And am I so glad that I did? I could read about this couple for the rest of time. So as you can see from the tabs, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I mean, I feel like Shane is my new favorite guy in romance novels. Like, no one has beat him since reading this book. I think about this book all the time. The woman, the main character, she lives with chronic pain and invisible illness, and that's something that I myself can relate to. So I felt like on a lot of different levels, I absolutely loved this book. It was amazing. I don't know why this does not get talked about more, because wow. It's about two authors who had a romance when they were young. They've been writing about each other ever since, and they rekindle all these years later, and it's supposed to just be about kind of saying their piece and walking away, but you know it doesn't end there, and wow. This book is just phenomenal. So please, if you're in the romance realm, you love reading that kind of stuff, this is one you need to pick up. So the next one was actually an arc that I read on my Kindle, so I'll just insert a picture right here, but it was The Night Shift, and I really enjoyed this book. I was really skeptical. I don't really love books that are set back in time, but if they're done really well or they're super interesting, then I can get into it. Thankfully, this was one of those. It's about this small town, and they had this horrific crime happen back in the 90s, and then present day it has happened again. So it's about piecing together what's going on, who's doing this, and there's suspects, and there's people who have fled, and there's so many suspicions and just things that made my mind do backflips. There's multiple points of view, which I liked. I didn't feel like it got muddy at all. You have the point of view of an FBI agent, you have the point of view of a victim, you have a point of view of somebody else. I think there also might be a couple other sporadic ones in there as well, but it doesn't get muddy, you don't get lost or anything like that. Typically, I don't love the authorities' point of view. I prefer to read either from the perpetrator or the victim, something like that. But this FBI agent is a woman. She was strong. She had a great mind on her. It was just a very nice, different pace for me, because typically I don't love that point of view. It kind of feels like I want them to go, go, go. And obviously there's a lot of steps in between what they want to do and what they can do. So it's like, I don't really love reading that, but you are more inside of her head. And I just felt like she was a great person to have a point of view from. So I would definitely request it if you love crime books. I think it's a great one. I would also consider it to be even a little bit of a thriller, because there were some things that happened that I did not see coming whatsoever, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. So this one, A+. The next one I got from my library when it came out, so I don't have it anymore, but that is The Violence. So this is a thick book. It's a thick one. It's the longest one I've read in a while, and when I had picked it up, all I knew about it was that it was about a woman struggling with her abusive household. She has 2 daughters, and there's also this kind of plague, virus, pandemic happening where people get sick, but they call it the violence. And basically what happens is once you have it, you have these blackout periods where you will literally attack somebody and you won't wake up until you've either exhausted yourself or you actually kill them. And these people can't be prosecuted, but they are being quarantined and taken away because they haven't found a cure for it yet. So it's this like really scary thing. It is very violent, and because of that, you kind of have this like apocalyptic vibe going on, because people are scared to go out anywhere because you don't know who has it until they're attacking somebody. And like, that did sound interesting, but I did not expect to like this book as much as I did, because wow, the plot line that I thought would happened within like the first 150 pages. And I'm like, okay, what's the rest of this book for? Because we've accomplished everything I thought this book was going to set out to do. It is so much more than that. If you want to read about different women triumphing and breaking generational trauma, this is the book for you. It's got a very like girl power vibe to it. There's multiple points of view, and the one thing that I respect the most about this book is it is in 3 parts. This author easily could have made this into 3 books. They could have added fluff. They could have just drawn it out and put out 3 separate books, but they didn't. They released it as one, and I feel like that is just so respectful, because you get the whole picture with nothing that felt like unnecessary to be reading about. And there were so many people that I went from disliking so much to rooting for them. Like, this book is just amazing. And it's also funny sometimes, it's heartwarming, it's also heartbreaking. Like, there's so many different emotions into this book. And as a mom myself, it was really hard to read sometimes because the main character is a mom where a lot of things are out of her control and she just has to do the best with what she has in the moment. And I just feel like every mother can respect that. So if you're looking for a longer, girl power kind of book, this is definitely it. I enjoyed it so much. It was well worth the page count. And again, can't say enough how much I respect that author for just making it one whole book. And I look forward to the rest of their work because I really enjoyed this. The next one I got on my Kindle, and that is Lucinda Berry's When She Returned. Again, kind of went into this book figuring I would like it because it is Lucinda Berry and I haven't read a book of hers that I haven't enjoyed yet. But this book absolutely shattered me. You know, when you see those TikToks about books that broke your heart and like made you sob and all those kind of things, just make you feel all the emotions? That's this book for me. I don't want to say too much because I didn't realize what was happening until towards the end of the book, and I would like to keep it that way for any of you who would want to read it. But if you need a book where it's just gonna break up maybe some emotional congestion that you got going on, this is the book, because it's still one that I think about. Lucinda Berry just has a way with thrillers and has a way with suspense, and I haven't read a single thing that I don't enjoy from her. She does a phenomenal job. It's about a mom who went missing in a parking lot, a Target parking lot of all places, and she is not seen of until like 15 some years later. She shows up, she has a baby with her, she looks as though she's been abused and just not taken care of for all of these years, and it's all about piecing together what happened to her. And now her husband has remarried and her daughter is now a teenager, and it's just a wild ride that made me so emotional, and it's still the saddest book that I think I've ever read to date. Next book is a book that I got for Valentine's Day from my husband, and that is November 9 from Colleen Hoover. So I'm going to be completely honest and say I was avoiding this book because of the cover. I don't know why. I preferred the other one, and you can't find that cover like really anywhere unless you want to pay a lot of money. So I just figured whenever I come across that book, that's when I'll try it out. But this book, pretty much as soon as you get the lay of the land with this book, I was absolutely hooked, and I knew it was going to be a 5-star absolute favorite read for me. So you can see from the tabs, I did thoroughly enjoy it. So it's about a girl named Fallon, and she is a burn survivor. She meets this guy named Ben when he is sticking up for her during a lunch with her dad. That's as far as I want to elaborate on that one. And they have this great day together, but Fallon is moving to New York City. So that is going to be quite a ways away from him. And they decide to just take the day and pretend to be boyfriend and girlfriend. And then by the end of the day, they've had so much fun. They really are liking each other that they agree to meet up every year on November 9th. And they can have absolutely no communication in between. They block each other on social media. They make their plans for the next year when they are meeting, and they decide on a place and a time, and that's where they're going to meet the next November 9th. And I knew as soon as I heard them agree to that, I'm like, done. There's also a huge aspect of like confidence and finding your confidence with this story, and Fallon and how she feels about her body since surviving the fire. She's on this path to finding that confidence, and Ben helps her with that. And that's something that I loved reading. Loved it. I also felt like the whole concept of them meeting every year, having no contact in between. They agreed that they couldn't just be monogamous because that is such a long time to go between seeing each other, and it just wasn't fair. So like, you know the second that they agree to this, that the drama is going to happen. And in true Colleen Hoover fashion, it's a beautiful story. There was a twist at the end that nearly took the wind out of me when I realized what was happening. And I kind of want to reread this again because it's one of those ones where when you know the information, I really wonder how it would make the rest of the book feel. But I thoroughly enjoyed this. It is now my favorite Colleen Hoover book. I'm really thankful that my husband got it for me for Valentine's Day, and I did not have to hold off on reading it anymore, because that's just one of my top favorite books now. If you couldn't tell, this was a really great month for books. I found quite a few of my top favorites that just like sit up there with some of the best reading experiences that I've ever had. And I know not every month will be like this, but it just made me so happy. So the next book is This Thing Between Us, and this is a book that I almost got at Barnes & Noble the last time I was there, because the cover just completely drew me in. But when I read the back of it, it mentioned a haunted smart home speaker device, if you catch my drift. And I was like, oh, like, I know this is supposed to be horror, but that just sounds like it could be so cheesy. And I don't know about that. But I've heard so many good things from BookTube and Bookstagram about this one that I was like, all right, you know what? Let's give it a shot. So I did, and I am so happy, because this not only was a great horror book, which I'll get to here in a second, but it also made me realize that I have a new favorite thing to read about. This book is basically a letter to his late wife, talking about all the weird stuff that happened before she died, and even some odd things that have happened since she's died, and kind of just this progression of things. I'm very particular with dialogue in books. If there's not a lot of it, it's really hard to keep me like interested and entertained. However, since this is a letter to somebody, it's almost entirely like dialogue, you know, like he's talking to her the entire time, which is really cool. But you also do have other dialogue with other characters in there as well. And I'll just say off the bat, because I don't think that this is going to throw you off too much, but the whole smart speaker thing is short-lived to a bigger picture. And I really loved reading about grief. I've experienced a lot of grief myself. I am a survivor of reoccurrent miscarriage. I've had 5 when my husband and I were trying to have children, and 4 of those were back to back. And it's something that I don't think I'm quite ready to read about, but grief in itself is something that was very therapeutic for me to read. Even though the main character and I did not lose the same people in our lives, I feel like grief can be really similar in some ways, and especially about feelings and how other people talk to you and all the kind of like internal stuff that's going on with grief. So I really enjoyed that, and I felt like it was really great for me. So I feel like I'm going to find more books along this line, even though that sounds like a really weird thing to look for. So I thoroughly enjoyed it because of that. But also, like I said, the whole haunted speaker thing is a very small portion of this big story. And let me just say, I am very picky when it comes to horror. So whether it's books or if it's movies, I'm very particular. I just feel like there's a fine line with horror. It can be done really well. It can be ominous and spooky, and you're always like wondering what's going to happen next, and it's going to be keeping you on the edge of your seat. And then there's these times where it can be overdone and cheesy and just kind of feel like yeah, it might still scare you, but not on the same level of like something that really is just like dark and sinister. So I like my things to be more dark and sinister than cheesy and over the top. And this book is definitely dark and sinister. So like I said, it's very short-lived with the whole speaker situation. And I don't want to give too much away, because I think if you are going to read a horror book, you want something that's darker, you're okay with reading about grief, go into this book not knowing a whole lot. Just let it take you the places that it needs to, and know that this is a great book. And lastly is a book that I thought I was really gonna enjoy, and I did, because I gave it 4 stars, but it wasn't like amazing over the top, but I did still really enjoy it, and that's The Chain. So how it works is there is somebody who kidnaps your child. You get a phone call, you're asked to do several things, one of which being to kidnap a child yourself, and that's the only way that you are going to get your child back. And it's a whole chain link of events. Then the person that you kidnapped their child from, that family has to kidnap a child. And it just goes on and on and on. And so that's the reason why it's called The Chain. And I felt like that was such a promising storyline. So basically, the people who put this on and who are responsible for the chain even beginning, they are very hands off. It's basically all of the parents doing the work themselves by kidnapping other children and not letting those children go until the next person does it and the next person does it, and so on and so forth. And it's also where if someone doesn't follow the rules, then your child could be harmed. So you want to keep everybody else in line just like you want to follow the rules. I thought that was very interesting. Basically a whole kidnapping ring that was pretty hands-off approach, which sounded pretty new to me. So I really enjoyed this book. I don't think it's bad by any means. I think what it was is there was just a little fluff in here, which I didn't really like. I felt like if they just had focused a bit more on what was happening in the moment and less about what was going on in the parent's head, I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. Not to say that that's not an important point of view, but I feel like, especially if you're a parent, and probably even if you're not, you can guess how people are going to feel. They're going to be tempted to break the rules, but then they realize that they can't if they want their child to be safe. And would you really do anything for your child? I think all of our answers are yes. And it's just all these things about having to make this happen and do things that you did not think that you'd be capable of. And this book is also a bit of a long game, so I don't want to give too much away, but it's not like you're just focusing on only the story of this woman getting her daughter back. There's a little bit more to it. I felt like the ending was a little predictable, but because it was so high action, I didn't mind it. I felt like it unfolded pretty nicely. Again, it was one of those books where I really enjoyed it, so that's why I gave it 4 stars. It was great. I just didn't love all the internal dialogue. It was a little fluffy for me, but all around, I think it's an awesome thriller. I think it puts a lot of hard questions in your brain as a parent yourself, so I don't know. I really enjoyed this book. I do highly recommend it. And yeah, that was everything that I read for the month of February. All around, like I said, a pretty solid month, finding 3 new top tier, very favorite books of mine, which I was very excited about. I will say that March so far is off to a great start. And I just feel like with every one of these that I do, I get more excited to share with you the next month because I've already started, I've already read a couple books. So I can't wait to share those with you guys. Let me know if you add any of these to your TBR. Down in the comments, let me know what your favorite book that you read this month was. And if you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave the book emoji. And if you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And as always, thanks for watching.